What's up, reasonable people? Let's do a little live stream. What do you say? A little live stream, just a scooch of a live stream. Last night, I was up until 1 o'clock. I went and saw The Cult in Auburn, Washington. It's about a 45-minute drive away. Got home late, woke up normal time. Ugh, let's do this anyway. Okay, so Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua has, it's coming up. They're doing their thing. And one of the big, we're going to focus on how they get here and what's going on. One of the big news stories that's out there right now is in locations that have serious gang activity, like Chicago. Tren de Aragua is basically pushing out some of the existing gangs, and they are not pleased. Let's watch a little video. This is one of the kind of the side stories that are coming together as mainstream media finally picks up on the fact that Tren de Aragua is here in the United States, and they are operating like a solid terrorist organization that they are. Here's a video that has a bunch of clips that I found really interesting from the New York Post. The reporter did a good job on this one. Let's play this one.
America has allowed gangs to enter our country.
The migrants that are coming, they're taking over every block right now.
The city of Chicago is going to go up in smoke, it's going to go up in flame.
Gangs in Chicago are angry over the influx of migrants and criminals in their city. They say money that should be going to the African American community on the South Side is instead going to what they call non-citizens, and warn that turf wars between Chicago's gangs and groups like Venezuela's Tren de Aragua could see Chicago, quote, go up in flames. Photographer Matt McDermott and I traveled to Chicago's South Side to see what was happening for ourselves after we heard about a police report last month that the Tren de Aragua gang had taken over an office building there. We spoke to a number of young, hardcore gang members, and they're all furious at the estimated $500 million that's reportedly been funneled toward new migrants in Chicago since 2022.
Now, the gangs could probably care less about that. They want their part of the $500 million. But more importantly, they are concerned about their fair share of the crime pie, because it's going to go away. There's only so much crime that that any given organization can do in any city, and that's what they're upset about. But you got to spin it like was spun here. I think this is the end. Yeah, that was the end. So there's that. What's that going to look like down the road? Are you going to have like a, what I was talking about was, remember the rooftop Koreans going after the looters after the Rodney King deal? You're going to have that kind of just gang warfare going on. That was South Central LA. You were talking about Chicago. And Chicago, it has just had the, shootings just going left and right. And that's gang on gang violence. So now you got gang on gang violence on Tren de Aragua gang violence. A little different story. So as we are, let's see if I've got the, let's go back. Here's something interesting. If you just type in Tren de Aragua, this is what I do oftentimes, is I will do a quick search and see what's going on. What does this look like? What is kind of mainstream media reporting? They're reporting more and more stories on Tren de Aragua. Initially, they tried to just completely ignore it. What gang activity? There's no gangs in the United States. But now your stories are New York City, they're Chicago, we've got one recently in Idaho, California. Anywhere that you've got a contingency of Venezuelan migrants, of migrants in general, and there's been so many Venezuelans coming to the country, they're setting up shop in those communities, because their, big book of business is human trafficking, is sex trafficking. That's what they specialize in. And then, you got a little extortion, you got a little prostitution, you got robbery, armed robbery, the mainstays of that kind of criminal activity. But here's some of the stories. Chicago gangs rage against newly arrived Venezuelans. Okay, that's the one we just covered. Police in New York City and Chicago try to curb growth of Tren de Aragua. Good luck with that. You're not able to curb your existing crime. And yet the FBI is telling us, crime's down. It's okay. Crime's down. It's all good. Chicago gangbangers rage against newly arrived Venezuelan. I mean, we're not there yet, but that is the narrative that I think will be out there. And it's interesting. So you got the New York Post, you got Fox News. They're going to capitalize on that for sure. But here's where mainstream media comes in. NBC Chicago. What is Tren de Aragua? What to know about gang making, headlines and that kind of thing. Venezuelan super gang, Tren de Aragua. That's Daily Mail. So most of this stuff is from right of center platforms. You got Facebook, News Nation, ex-gang member concerned Chicago and Venezuelan gangs are going to do their thing. But what you're starting to see is some NBC articles. You're starting to see some AP. Tren de Aragua gang started in Venezuela's prisons and now spreads fear in the U.S. Well, they've been here for a while. They've just been setting up. They are just getting started. And, most mainstream media doesn't want to report this because when you do, you're basically admitting that current policies set by the Biden and Harris administration are responsible for this ridiculousness. So Kamala Harris can't talk out of both sides of her mouth, even though she is. I'm tough on crime. I prosecuted as the attorney general. Yeah, but then you let all kinds of criminals in with your immigration policy or lack thereof. So you can't have it both ways. It doesn't work that way, right? It's like that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So having this storyline out in the mainstream media, it's not a good look for the current administration. And it's not a good look moving forward with the Harris campaign. It's, you just want to try and ignore this. That's why I think maybe the storyline with the, cats for dinner, dogs for dinner, ducks for dinner in Springfield has gotten so much attention because whether or not the Haitians are eating the dogs or the cats, you bring in 20,000 Haitians, 15,000 Haitians into a community of 60,000, you're going to have some real problems. You're going to have some real cultural differences. And that is what mainstream media is not recognizing at all. How about all the flipped cars? How about because they can't drive and they're just basically given the right to drive? How about the school system? You bring in that many kids that don't speak English as a first language, try teaching them. How about the, healthcare system? Just the infrastructure alone, you bring those kind of numbers into a community like that, you're going to have just craziness going on. And if they eat a few ducks, that's going to happen. And they eat some geese, they eat Fluffy the cat. Is that actually happening? I think it is. Do we have any real credible proof? We've got a little bit, but probably not enough to be making as big a deal of it as we have. But that's what, mainstream media is focusing on. The now debunked theory that Haitians are eating, Fluffy in Springfield is terrible, right? It's like, those right wingers, those people, they don't know what they're talking about. So here's the main article. In little more than a year, a once obscure South American street gang has taken hold in the Big Apple. Not only the Big Apple, multiple other cities. We got Aurora, Colorado being a big one, right? Exploiting the migrant crisis to build a violent criminal enterprise from within the walls of city shelters. Remember, this is a prison gang that the government of Venezuela basically said, yeah, we can't control this. We're going to give up. We're going to literally turn the prison over to the inmates. You guys run it. And they did. And then they dumped out the prisons. And, we had this mass immigration into the United States. And a whole bunch of them are here operating as a business. Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought? Yeah. And when I say that kind of thing, I am saying very sarcastically, did you not see point A to point B coming? Because if you didn't, you're just... So I think this is why this is on purpose. This has a purpose, letting millions of people into the United States, whether the end goal is, they're going to vote for us later or destabilizing society as we know it. I don't really know. but I'm going to cover it because I think these issues, I mean, this is ridiculous. Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan-bred crew of thugs. No, they're convicted criminals. They're felons, now terrorize Gotham with gun-toting, moped-riding hoods, selling illegal guns under the very noses of private shelter security guards, and run sleazy prostitution rings in neighborhoods suddenly besieged by the marauding migrants. Yeah, that's all going on. And it's going on with, local authorities basically saying, yep, it's happening. It's going on. They're arresting folks. Are they turning them over to ICE? Only if somebody does something really bad, right? Because the deal with, if you haven't been following the storyline, the deal with the sanctuary cities is that they basically want to protect the illegals coming in because they think that that's compassion towards, somebody who needs the ability to get away from the violence or whatever in their own country and come to the United States. And they never really figured out, oh, yeah, but so many of these folks are just criminals themselves. And when they come here and we self-proclaim that we're a sanctuary city, and then they know that they have protection because sanctuary city essentially means local authorities don't have the right or won't be given the right by, elected political officials to turn said criminals committing crimes in the United States over to ICE to be deported. That's not happening, except in some really, really egregious crimes going on. You'll see that. You'll see the little byline, and he was deported. It's like, well, of course he was. The guy is a total convicted felon. And, since the United States doesn't really have any interaction with Venezuela, Venezuela's government, or lack thereof, we can't really vet who's who because we're not given any information from, Venezuela itself. So the gang, which also peddles a lethal fentanyl mix called Tusi or pink cocaine. Have you been hearing about that? I've been hearing about that. Little pink cocaine action has grown so fast it's so far overwhelmed both average New Yorkers and the city's elite police force. I mean, you've seen the scooters riding around, right? And that's just not a bunch of people in migrant shelters just, well, we don't have much else to do here. And, we don't really have a way to make a living. And so it's organized. You got all those scooters out in front. None of them have plates. None of them have licensing. They don't have tabs. But somebody's putting that together, right? It's organized crime. And in the case of in the Venezuelan communities, it's Tren de Aragua. And, we know the dozen or so tattoos that they're identified by. I mean, and the whole Aurora thing was just like, what? I mean, that storyline to me, it took a while for the full details to come out on that. And I think there was an awful lot of, hey, let's keep this under wrap because this doesn't look good. Not every immigrant is here to commit crimes. Not every migrant is a gang member, said New York Police Department Chief of Detectives Joseph Kenny. But these TDA guys hide very well in plain sight in the migrant community. They've got protection. So now you've got an issue where, yeah, not every one of them is a gang member, but enough of them are where you're going to have some real issues with turf wars, with who's got the corner, right? Who's got the corner? And a few of the videos I've seen, they've, driven around with gang members, and the gang members identify, okay, yeah, that building's been taken over. I forget what they call it, but they basically just a whole bunch of them stand out in front, and they basically just state, this is our turf. We've taken this over. We're operating here. And at some point in time, you're going to run out of space for all these folks to kind of coexist, not so peacefully, and you're going to have some major eruptions of violence, as if Chicago doesn't have major eruptions of violence. Anyway, I think yesterday I checked in on Hey Jackass Chicago, and the stats were every 2 minutes, 48 seconds, somebody is shot in Chicago, and every 14 minutes, somebody is murdered in Chicago. So, expect that to ramp up because that's just what's going to happen if you have a gang war kind of take off. So we aren't looking to grab the food delivery guy, but these guys go so far as to wear Uber Eats clothing. They use delivery bags while they're out there committing their crimes. Why wouldn't they? They've been given a bag. They look like Uber Eats guys. I mean, that's great cover. Oh, hey, we're migrants just trying to get by, trying to do our thing. And that's the whole hiding in plain sight thing. We've seen the scooters. We've seen all of that criminal activity. And we're like, yeah, that's weird. They just organized that quickly. Weird. And, it kind of just does one of these numbers. That was probably like 6 months ago, right? Well, somebody's organizing that. Yeah, it's Tren de Aragua. That's the predominant gang here. When we do arrest them, they are very eager to talk about the crime they have committed. They're unwilling to talk about TDA itself. Of course, nobody wants to talk about the actual organization because then the organization comes knocking. Hey, I hear you went on YouTube and you said a bunch of stuff about us. We'd like to chat. The gang, whose name means Tren from Aragua, a state in north central Venezuela in Spanish, now runs citywide theft and robbery crews that have terrorized neighborhoods. In Jackson Heights, a stretch of Roosevelt Avenue, dubbed the Market of Sweethearts, has become a testament to TDA's muscle and influence, with vendors peddling stolen items and an open-air red light district that has migrant hookers walking the streets day and night. Human trafficking, sex trafficking, prostitution. Some of the incidents that I was reading in the Aurora, Colorado cases, where they would, put very young teenagers into these rooms of these apartment complexes that were, pretty run down to begin with. And I don't know if you've ever been through like a really low end, big apartment complex. They all look like they're under some kind of renovation. You're like, yeah, are they working on that one? Oh, somebody's going to move into that tomorrow. Okay, what about the sink that's missing? Yeah, we'll get to that. Those kind of projects, or they're missing a door, the doors are kicked in, or you got bullet holes, you got Bondo on the old aluminum frame, hollow core doors where people are, Bondoing up the door, that kind of project. Tren de Aragua is coming in and basically taking over units. And we know this to be true. They're taking over units and they're installing young girls, and they're basically running prostitution deals. That's their bread and butter. And they have that in because you've already got a whole bunch of immigrants in the community, girls that may not be there with their family, that are completely vulnerable. And so it's a total make sense, on the dark side of things, from the standpoint of that's a pretty easy crime to get going and have make absolute sense. All right, so long list of victims. One current crime spree has seen nearly 24 heists pulled off by migrants wielding guns or knives, with the crooks typically as young as 15 and no older than 19 years old. So they use the younger kids because they know that in these sanctuary cities, those kids might, go through the juvenile system, but they're not going to do any real time. On top of that, they're a sanctuary city. They're not going to be turned over. So you are seeing younger and younger kids get involved in this. And, it makes absolute sense. Go to the United States, be a gangbanger, because that's, all you had to look at when you were at home in Venezuela. That was your only out. So one of my big issues is that the United States can't handle everybody's problems. You can't take on everybody that's located in a country throughout the world. It's not doable. It's not feasible. So this whole notion of let's just take them on, Chicago spending $500 million, and now you've got the locals going, hey, wait a minute. We've got some real poverty issues that have been endemic to Chicago for years and years and years, right? A welfare state, you've got that going on. And I think a lot of the folks that aren't getting the illegal immigrant money are looking at that and going, what is the deal here? That's taxpayer money that could be going to us. And so you've got this, two-sided issue going on, and folks that arguably they're American citizens, they should be getting the help that they need. You might argue they need to get off their ass and get a job. I wouldn't disagree with you on many of them, but there's a real segment of society that needs help that just basically can't take care of themselves either. That's just life, right? I mean, it just happens. Some of you are going to say, well, yeah, get up and get a job. I worked hard. Yep, true. Not denying any of that. But you've got folks that are, really in need as well. And yet you've got Tren de Aragua coming in and getting the money that should be going elsewhere. And that, I think, is a very, very tough one for folks to swallow. And it's a tough one for me to swallow as well, because why are we doing this? What's the end game here? How many millions are you going to bring in? And then, like in Springfield, Ohio, just shocking that there's all these cultural differences going on. You keep hearing about the illegals going into grocery stores and basically helping themselves to the fruit at the beginning of the store. And then I think it was like taking jars of spaghetti sauce and opening them up and just kind of eating from the jars. I'm basically going off of what multiple videos that I've seen of people, basically giving their testimony of what they're seeing in stores in Springfield. And mainstream media wants to cover all that up because it's just not a good look. But you just look at the numbers alone, 20,000 of them into a community of 60,000. You don't think there's going to be some issues? And last month, a woman walking near Rockefeller Center was pickpocketed by another migrant. You're going to have a bunch of that. I mean, you're seeing small stories of that happening every single day. And again, that was once the province of, local gangs, good old US of A gangs, right? Now they're being pushed out because sheer numbers are coming in. And also, I think the violence that Tren de Aragua is just totally okay with. I mean, they got nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing to lose. And they're basically politically protected. Oh, yeah. I mean, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to them? Well, they're maybe going to get deported. And are they going to go to jail in Venezuela? No, all those jails, prison system just got dumped out, right? The New York Police Department also recently shut down a major gang-linked robbery crew with nearly 24 migrant teens either busted or identified as suspects in 21 separate and often violent robberies. Seeing that all day long. Okay, so I'm trying to get rid of this bad boy here, and there it is. Okay. That darn thing was driving me crazy. Here's a little map. I found this pretty interesting. This is a massive oversimplification of what you've got going on. We start in Venezuela. We go to Chihuahua, Mexico. Kind of a northern Mexico, you've got El Paso across the border. Their next step is from Chihuahua to El Paso, and then you go directly north into Denver, which is kind of centered in the United States relative to West Coast and then East Coast. And then from Denver, you go to Utah, or you go to Canyon County. Where is Canyon County? I don't know where Canyon County is. Is that California? Is that, or I'm not sure. I think that's California. And then on the East Coast, you've got Chicago and New York City. I mean, it makes sense because, Denver is that one hub. You've got a massive Venezuelan population there. Denver has taken on 42,000 illegals in the last couple of years, and a big percentage of that population was Venezuelans. Obviously not all of them were criminals. Very small percentage. But when you're talking small percentages of 40,000 plus, now you've got several hundred of the, members that are operating in some capacity with Tren de Aragua. Now you've got real operations going on. And that's why I think you're starting to see all the news stories kind of leak through, because you can't contain them. It's like, oh, yeah, because what we focused on earlier was, young ladies getting assaulted and then murdered. Those were the big stories, right? And then all of a sudden, what is going on? We've got this criminal gang operating in our hometown. Yep, that's a happening. So we've got very bad people. For the majority of asylum seekers, the gang is a stain on their community, an example of the rampant violence and lawlessness that forced them to leave their stands in the homelands in the first place. They're trying to escape this nonsense. But with the way that our immigration policy is, or lack thereof, come into the United States. We'll give you a court date. Good luck with that. We're going to parole you to the interior of the United States. Do your thing. Would you like to go to Denver, Chicago, New York City, D.C.? Where would you like to go? You know, that's literally what the federal government has done. And now we're not really doing that. They're basically driving in the illegals with the border app. I don't know if you've kind of followed that story, but you can get into the United States on the border app. And I just read a story last weekend where a family came through and not one question was asked why they're seeking asylum in the United States. They just came on in. They could have been anybody. It was a family with kids, but they just came on in, no questions asked, because you check in on the border app, and eventually, if you hang tight, you might get your appointment. You check in at a lawful border like Eagle Pass, where you've got, the big overhead walkway, and you basically go through customs and say, hey, I'm here with the border app. Here's my proof. Mexico side looks at it, goes, yep. And U.S. side looks at it and goes, yep, come on in. And they're in legally. They're in legally with no questions asked. That isn't always the case, but that's literally what you've got going on. Let's check out some of these other stories. Texas to offer up to $5,000 reward for Tren de Aragua gang member arrests. Yeah, so Texas is going in kind of hard. They are not having this. Let me see if I can get this squared away a little bit better. There we go. Texas, always on the forefront of kind of bringing the hammer down on any illegal activity, because they're on the border and they've got the biggest segment on the border, and they've done the best job at basically, quashing a lot of what's coming in. But now the federal government's basically just shifting it to the one app, and folks are coming in, legally. Numbers are way down. Everybody wants to take credit for that. Greg Abbott wants to take credit for that. Biden, is he still our president? Is he even in office? You just don't hear anything about him anymore, do you? You don't see a darn thing about him. What happened to our fearless wonder that we were told was going to be able to run another 4 years? No problem. Boy, they just cut him off, didn't they? Just boom, done. You're out of here. Yep, next, let's bring Kamala Harris, his sidekick, in, because in the last 4 years, she's gotten nothing done. Let's give her a run and see how this goes, right? Texas has launched a reward program offering up to $5,000 for information leading to the arrests of Tren de Aragua gang members. This is after Greg Abbott declared the gang a foreign terrorist organization. Yeah, I mean, they are. They're coming in from the outside. They're here illegally, and they shouldn't be. They should be vetted. But we don't have the ability to really even check them out, and especially not with the policy we've got going on. So come on in, it's all good. Tren de Aragua has spread terror and carnage in every country they've been in, and Texas will not allow them to gain a foothold in our state. I believe Greg Abbott when he says that, because why would you go to Texas when you can go to California, when you can go to, Colorado, when you can go to New York? Make it easy on yourself. Slide on in. Don't fight the current. You know what I mean? Just go where you've already got a community. They'll set you up. They'll hook you up. And that's what you've got going on. TDA gang members have recently become entrenched in major cities nationwide. Since fiscal year 2021 through July, Venezuelan illegal border crossers total nearly 856,000, the greatest number in U.S. history. According to CBP data, an additional 115,000 Venezuelans were granted parole through a program created by Homeland Security. Overwhelming majority are single military age adults. And that is what I think, those of us that are a little bit more conservative have been looking at going, what's the dealio here? What's this all about? What, you see the long lines at the airport when holiday travel was a thing, and we didn't really realize that they were just getting a plane ride to wherever the F they wanted to go, because that's how our immigration policy works now. So the parole program has been directly linked to perpetrators committing violent crimes against Americans, including TDA gang members. And I think here we go. In Texas, law enforcement officials have arrested more than 3,000 Venezuelan illegal border crossers. More than 200 are wanted. So, that's just Texas. You multiply that throughout the United States, and those are the ones that they caught. How about all the ones that are just running around, like the ones we see in the videos running through Aurora, Colorado? Now, folks want to say, well, yeah, but they didn't really take over the entire apartment complex. I think they did. You look at multiple sources of how that went down. The city shuts down the one on, I think it was Nome Street, in 6 days. Like a 90+ unit project, they're clearing out in 6 days? Only because that thing has been completely taken over. It wasn't because there were health violations. It wasn't because you had some toilets that didn't work. You had some sewer issues. It wasn't because you had leaky roofs. It was a terrible look. And I think Tren de Aragua had really gotten in there, and they're doing their thing. Like we talked about with the apartment units that need work, and some of them have bashed out windows. Well, a dude hops in, they board up the window, they take that unit over one by one by one, because they don't have anything else. They're not going to go out and get a job. They're gang members. This is what they do. So Texas Department of Public Safety Commander Steve McGraw said last week that Texas anti-gang centers already have ongoing criminal enterprise investigations against TDA. And, other states will follow suit. Texas is always kind of on the front end of that because they view themselves as the United States of Texas. And, hey, we're not going to take this. I have no issues with that. I think Greg Abbott's done a great job. But, is some of this a little day late, dollar short? Yeah, well, what about all that stuff where, the first couple of years of this administration, you just literally had millions of people pouring through. And I think most of us looked at it and went, what is going on here? What are we doing? It's just a wild situation, right? Here's some more stories as we go here. All right. I'm going to kill the audio here so that doesn't just go off. Yeah, former Chicago gangster blames Vice President Harris and Dems for turf war between local gangs. There's only so much room. There's only so much turf. And everybody wants the good turf, right? Hey, that's the block where we sell all the drugs. Well, that's ours now. How do you think the existing gang structure in Chicago is just going to, after decades and decades and decades, how do you think that's going to go in Los Angeles? I haven't really talked too much about Los Angeles because I don't think they have as much of a, with the Crips and Bloods there, I don't think you've got as much of a ability to do a foothold. And why would you if you don't have a massive community there? Now, we've got all kinds of folks coming in through San Diego, because once Texas kind of shut things down earlier this year in 2024, after that ridiculous Q4 of mass surge into the United States, we're in, I think, December, you had 302,000 illegals come across. I mean, just some mind-blowing numbers. They're going to California now. They're not going to Texas. So numbers that are already here, those I think will just get stronger and stronger. And another one, Chicago gangs clash with Venezuelan Tren de Aragua, blacks against migrants. I mean, that could be the be all of wars, because neither one of them are going to back down, and neither one of them really respect law enforcement authority in general. And we have taken away law enforcement's ability to handle the illegals from the standpoint of being in these sanctuary cities. And then just on the regular day-to-day, I mean, your examples of the policing, that they just basically can't do their job anymore. So what do you expect? People are just going to run around and shoot each other. That's how we're solving crimes. I mean, that's how we're solving problems. So I don't think there was too much there. And then nothing different here. And then, yeah, this is kind of my last segment here. Tren de Aragua gang started in Venezuela's prisons and now spreads fear in the U.S. This is the AP. The AP is starting to pick up. They will, like so many of these other news organizations, they will kind of shame mainstream media into covering it. Hey, this is a story. Those guys on the right, they've been covering this for a while because, you know, it looks better for their side. And now all of a sudden, what is this Tren de Aragua? Where did they come from? So you've got stories like this. Former federal agent Waz Tabor says his phone has been lighting up with calls from police departments around the U.S. for advice on how to combat the growing threat from the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. Tabor was in charge of the U.S. Drug and DEA office in the Venezuelan capital of Caracas in 2012. When the gang was still new and when Tabor had barely heard of it. Venezuela had long been a major transit zone for cocaine smuggled by Colombian guerrillas, with a leftist government that had close ties to some of America's top adversaries, Iran and Russia. I mean, it's no wonder we have zero working relationship with Venezuela. They're on the other side. They're an enemy. And then we're just bringing in, you know, the dregs of their prison system. Yeah, come on in, guys. It's all good. It's all good. Can we get you, can we get you housing? Can we get you food? Can we get you clothing? How can we help you help us? Right? Because there's this notion that everybody is coming into the United States to just work real hard legally. And that's not necessarily true. So that's a lot of what I focus on is that, yes, there's a contingent of people who are good folks, hardworking folks, families, just trying to raise kids, trying not to get murdered, like in, their hometown, whatever that looks like. But you bring in enough people and math, you bring in enough people and you're going to have some bad hombres. And they're being run by Tren de Aragua. It's just as simple as that. So all these other stories, these ridiculous stories about, dogs for dinner, ducks for dinner, this is the real stuff you need to focus on because this is the real crime going on. If you have some Haitians eating some, migratory waterfowl that isn't real migratory, if you know what I mean. Oh, we're just going to sit in this pond. Wait a minute. Why is that guy coming at me with the machete? That to me is kind of, all right, yeah, somebody's going to tell the folks that you can't have Donald Duck for dinner. That's a no-go, no good. If anybody catches videoing you doing that, it's all over, guys. And, we don't want that. They want their benefits. They want their support. Because most of the folks coming into the United States don't have the ability to work. They have zero money. They are 100% dependent upon the U.S. for their, sustaining their life. And so they don't want to get caught doing that stuff. But enough of that has happened. But the real focus and the real emphasis should be on the elevated levels of crime that have invariably happened because we've had this open border policy. Those are my thoughts. And this isn't a real hard storyline to kind of figure out. You can cobble together a handful of these videos and you just kind of go, ooh, yeah, this isn't good. That's not a good look. This isn't going to have a happy ending. And it's not, because you're not going to be able to you already don't have enough law enforcement in the United States to do what we're doing. And then if the next election goes the wrong way, which who knows how that's going to go, right? It's a close, tight enough race. If that happens, what's going to happen with, all this stuff that's kind of in the process where immigration has been slowed down because it was such a bad look for the current administration? What's going to happen with that? It's like the homelessness issue in San Francisco. London Breed needs to get reelected, right? So she is just going to town, clearing out the homeless. She's just scooting them out a little bit further so they're no longer in downtown, so the business owners don't scream and yell, but they don't go away. They go somewhere, right? And with the illegals that we've got in the country, where are they going to go? You going to deport all of them back home? No, that is not going to happen. But I think you need to allow law enforcement to do their job. In these sanctuary cities, that's on them. So if you're living in a sanctuary city and this is happening to you, that really sucks. I live in a sanctuary city here in the Seattle area, but we just don't have as many folks coming our direction as other communities do, like, Springfield, like Chicago, like Denver. It's just not how things have gone. So here we are moving forward. Yeah, this could be a massive cluster. The ducks and, that kind of stuff. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you got some issues there. But this is the stuff that is, I think, going to have a long-term impact. And we could very well have some fireworks in the very near future. Stay tuned. Thanks for being here on this live stream. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.